New data out of Florida shows that people there really have no idea what the hell is going on. So, I'm going to break down these numbers, these incredible numbers, showing a serious disconnect between the politicians they support and the policies that they support. Now, this is often the case, especially in red states, but in Florida in particular, it is almost stunning how different these two things are. So let me first get to where all this data is coming from. This is the University of North Florida, their Public Opinion Research Lab. This was released on Thursday. I will link to all of this data, this whole PDF below the video under sources on YouTube. I link to all my sources always on YouTube. So if you want to go through it, you can. But let's start. So because it's all in small little numbers here, I put it out in a notepad. So let's start with the first question that I want to address. They ask, what do you think is the most important problem facing Florida today? First place, housing costs, which makes total sense. That is often the first issue for a lot of people, regardless of state. Florida in particular, right now, is dealing with a serious cost of housing crisis. So taking a look here, since DeSantis took office in 2019, rents in the Sunshine State have shot up 40% compared to 25% nationally. So cost of housing is an issue generally, but particularly in Florida. Now, what has DeSantis done? Nothing. And this may give you an indication as to why. In the past year, as rents continue to soar across Florida, the real estate industry donated more than $7 million to Ron DeSantis, with about $2.5 million coming from real estate industry players who had not given in prior elections. Now, they go on to break down those numbers even more, and you can look into that in terms of where it's coming from. You know, real estate developers, home builders, realtors, property managers, which at this time stand at a whopping $96 million cash on hand for his reelection bid. And they break it down further. But point being here, he's getting a lot of money from the real estate industry. Now, you may say, well, David, sure, I mean, he needs the money to run his race. Doesn't mean he's doing anything for them. Sure, that's possible, I guess. My first question is, why would they be giving the money if they're not getting a return on their investment? But sure, let's say, Ron DeSantis was like, yeah, I'm taking your money, but screw you guys. I'm going to help the people in Florida. I'm going to bring the cost of housing down. I'm not going to just simply blame everything on Joe Biden like I am currently doing. DeSantis blames Florida's skyrocketing housing costs on Biden. Now, look, you could argue a governor has limited ability to do much, which you'd be wrong. But you could say, well, he's not God. He can't move mountains. But is he doing anything? Why is Florida so much worse than every other state? To simply turn around and blame your political rivals? Come on. So that's the first issue. But to be fair to Florida, to be fair to voters in this poll, they were split on Ron DeSantis. So do you have a favorable or unfavorable view of Governor Ron DeSantis? Favorable, 50%, unfavorable, 46%. So honestly, a little closer than I imagined, but we're going to get to some more issues and specifically how it compares to the results in a potential election here. So in a 2024 presidential election, if it were held today and the candidates were Biden and Trump, who would you vote for? So, of course, it's Florida. They pick Trump over Biden, 50 to 43%. And if it's DeSantis or Biden, they pick DeSantis, 51 to 42%. This is where we get to the massive, massive disconnect between who they are supporting here and the policies that are currently being pushed by Ron DeSantis in Florida. Starting with this. A bill has been introduced in the Florida House of Representatives that would allow Floridians to carry a concealed weapon without a license as long as they meet certain criteria. The new law would not require safety training courses or certificates to carry a concealed weapon. Do you support or oppose the passage of this bill into law? 21% support. 77%, with 67% of them strongly opposing this. So this, very rarely do you see a majority like this on a political issue. This is a clear rejection of this idea of introducing a bill to allow Floridians to carry a concealed weapon without a license. A clear rejection of this idea. Where is Ron DeSantis on this? Well, his idea.
During today's bill signing, the governor revealed his next priority. He wants to make it easier to carry a gun in Florida. News 6's Troy Campbell has that story new at 11.
You know, this was something that I've always supported.
During a stop in Lee County on Friday, Governor Ron DeSantis told reporters he continues to support constitutional carry in the Sunshine State. The change would allow legal owners of guns to conceal carry their firearm without a carry permit. Current Florida law requires concealed carry permits issued by the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services Division of Licensing.
The last 2 years, it was not necessarily a priority for the legislative leadership, but, you know, we've been talking about it.
According to the...
Anyways, you can go on. There's more information in this video, but Ron DeSantis is pushing this. And in fact, not only is he pushing this, the bill doesn't go far enough for him. But despite that, he still supports it. But it doesn't go far enough for him. So legislation, that's from the Tampa Bay Times, legislation that would allow Floridians to carry concealed weapons without a permit. Let me just zoom in here. Without a permit or training is ready to be taken up by the full House and Senate without a change to allow people to openly carry guns in public. While DeSantis was recorded by a pro-gun group last week saying he was in support of permitless open carry, legislative leaders had stayed firm that the measure will only apply to the concealed carry of guns. DeSantis has said he won't veto the bill just because it may not include everything I want. People in Florida are massively against this. Now you could say, well, David, this is one policy. Floridians love Ron DeSantis for everything else. Let's get to the next question. Do you support or oppose allowing adults in Florida aged 21 and older to legally possess and purchase small amounts of marijuana for recreational use? Massive support here, 70% support. Oppose, 29%. Let's go to the results. Here's what Florida, or I should say DeSantis, is doing here. He's against, of course, recreational marijuana, despite 65% approval in their poll here. So, in fact, in other reporting, you could look this up. I'm not sure. I don't think I have this up here. In other polling, he says that he is against recreational marijuana because, or in other news, he says he's against it because he doesn't like the smell. Because there is no actual argument against recreational marijuana, but that's his argument, that he doesn't like the smell. So he is going to be against the will of the voters in Florida. I guess we should go to the next issue here. Do you support or oppose a ban on abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy in Florida with no exceptions for criminally induced pregnancy? 22% support, 75% with 62% strongly opposing. So 75% oppose this ban on abortion after 6 weeks with no exceptions for criminally induced pregnancy. I mean, a lot of this stuff, like when I'm showing you the DeSantis position here, to me it's so obvious because he's a Republican that they just stripped abortion rights out of the Supreme Court. Like there's been lots of news about this. Yet people you're not connecting the dots here that, hey, you have a Republican governor and you are for abortion. It's not really fitting together. But yeah, here, I mean, you already know the answer, right? DeSantis backs stricter abortion ban in Florida. So right now it's at 15 weeks. He wants to bring it down to 6. Let's get to the next question. Recently, legislation was proposed that would prohibit Florida public colleges and universities from supporting campus activities or programs that promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, and critical race theory, among other changes to the state university system. Do you support or oppose this legislation? So you even have this scary critical race theory, in this poll question. And still, support only at 35% to prohibit this. Oppose 61%. So most people are for leaving this stuff in. Don't touch it. Do I have to show you where Ron DeSantis sits on this? How would you not know as someone living in Florida? But apparently you don't, or you don't seem to care. DeSantis announced his plan to block diversity, equity, inclusion programs in state colleges. And as I go down here, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis announced plans this week to block state colleges from having programs on diversity, equity, and inclusion and critical race theory in his latest attack on Black and LGBTQ people in the public education system. There is just a massive disconnect between the policies that people support. And by the way, I could have brought up how Florida, in a ballot measure, passed a much higher minimum wage, and yet then voted for Republicans who are completely against that. Like, we can go down the list on policies. Is there, when they don't even have people in their own state on critical race theory, the thing that they are, fear-mongering about, is there a single policy that voters in majorities support the right for? Like, what is going on here? And I would, usually I would say it's the media. They're at fault. They're not informing you enough. But I showed you this local news report from Orlando that's discussing what DeSantis is supporting. So, social media, I'm sure, is partly to blame. Facebook, I'm sure, is really big in Florida. So I'm sure there's some blame there. But still, it's just this massive disconnect between what people actually support in policy and who they support politically. And if you want the breakdown of the people that voted in this poll, split the way it normally, split based on the demographics of Florida. So, a little 2% less Democrats than the right. Other 30%, this is normal. All this is normal. Race split, again, it mirrors the demographics of the state. So this is all, people are just, in Florida especially, completely disconnected from what their politicians, the ones they back, what they are for compared to what they themselves as the voters are for.